Hannibal tonight, many residents expressed concerns over how Hannibal city government is being run, with recent employee resignations and allegations of misconduct. WGEM's Rebecca Duffy attended tonight's city council meeting, and she is live in Hannibal with more on the story tonight. Rebecca, what happened?
Yeah, Daniel, around 13 residents came here to City Hall tonight to share their concerns about employee retention as well as transparency within city government. Many speakers tonight shared their thoughts about an email that was sent from Central Services Director Andy Dorian to other city department heads. That email, which was sent on July 7th, highlighted some of Dorian's concerns about City Clerk Angel Zerbonia. Residents said they did not understand why the City Council was not made aware of that email sooner. Dorian announced his resignation back in November, but has since withdrawn his resignation, citing the reason being, quote, personal issues and not because of a hostile work environment, end quote. According to City Attorney James Lemon, Zerbonia was placed on paid administrative leave about 1 month ago.
Why, when there were allegations of a bad work environment, would there not be a discussion by the City Council to create a better work environment? We have to retain and keep good employees if we want to have a well-managed city.
I did not leave because of a hostile work environment. I left because I got an awesome opportunity. And so I want it to be clear that is the case. I had a great opportunity to make some more money, do something different hours, different things.
Dorian said it was a private email that he sent to other department heads that got, quote, leaked by City Council, end quote. Many speakers requested that City Council have an external group conduct an investigation into allegations of a hostile work environment within the city clerk's office. They also asked the city to be more transparent with the public. And Zerbonia was not at tonight's City Council meeting. Deputy City Clerk Melissa Cogdill was there in her place. Reporting live in Hannibal, Rebecca Duffy, WGEM News.
And thank you, Rebecca. Lemon says the next step is for the council to decide whether or not to move forward with an investigation. He says the council will have to decide if that investigation is done internally or using an external party.